Hello, young scholars. This is Mr. Martirone, and welcome to World Cultures. In today's flipped classroom, we're going to compare the Roman Empire with the Han Dynasty. And what I want you to consider as you're watching these videos is what causes some empires to succeed and others to fail. So we are in Era 3, and we're going to be looking at the period from really 753 BCE all the way up to basically 500. So before we continue, young scholars, make sure you know the physical geography of both areas. For example, the Roman Empire began in Italy and spread throughout much of Europe, throughout the Middle East and North Africa, whereas the Han Dynasty began as smaller kingdoms and unified into what's now modern-day China. So what's remarkable about these two empires is that they both have three stages of development. So Rome begins as a kingdom of ununified city-states that eventually evolves into a republic, which is successful for several centuries, until that is replaced and eventually the Roman Empire, or Pax Romana, is established for several centuries. The Han Dynasty begins as smaller kingdoms are unified by a common ruler. They believe in something called the Mandate of Heaven, and that gives rise to a period known as the Pax Sinica, and they enter this golden age of truly remarkable developments. So before the 3rd century, China was divided into many smaller city-states and many small kingdoms, but they shared a common language and similar political organizations. So this was ripe for dynasty and empire. Several dynasties and empires emerge. The Han Dynasty is one of the great dynasties in Chinese history, encompassing nearly 400 years of expansion and consolidation. So within the powerful Han Dynasty, they began to unite the different kingdoms of China. They believed in the philosophy of legalism, which again was a system designed to create order in a time of unrest, and legalism was harsh and strict with severe punishments. And they also reintroduced Confucianism, and soon Confucian education and ethics became the cornerstone for the scholar and bureaucracy that eventually became the basis for the civil service in the Han Dynasty. And as these ideas of Confucianism, legalism, and Taoism spread throughout Asia, the Han emperors embraced the idea that humans were a part of the natural world and that the agriculture and nature could only thrive if they were good rulers. And this is what's known as the Mandate of Heaven. And all of these ideas come together and they become the central idea of Han rule. This is the idea that emperors rule because they had fulfilled their ren, meaning their benevolent duty to their community. The Mandate of Heaven also says that if they ruled badly, heaven would let them know, and it would ruin their empire with crop failures and other natural disasters. So under this Mandate of Heaven, disasters came to be seen as a result of poor governance, and these rulers could be replaced. And one of the most important accomplishments was the introduction of a civil service exam, or the creation of a meritocracy. Under this system, people were hired based on their test-taking abilities instead of their personal or family connections. And at first, many young men weren't really qualified for government positions. So what ended up happening was Han rulers created a national university in order to prepare people for employment. The combination of the exams and the university in China began a tradition of having well-trained and highly respected bureaucratic administrators run and enforce government policies. And as a result of this, China prospers for several years. Under the Pax Sinica, or Chinese peace, the country enjoyed peace and the economy grew and the population increased. As the common people prospered, so did the rich, who created a thriving market for luxury goods. Among these luxury goods was silk, and silk production increased greatly under the Han. And because Chinese silk was of such high quality, silk and silk garments could be sold as far away as the Roman Empire, Mesopotamia, Persia, and that establishes the creation of the Silk Road. During the Pax Sinica, other accomplishments include the invention of paper as an easier way of transportation of goods and ideas. We have the first recorded census, meaning people are actually counted. The Chinese also develop an accurate calendar of 365.25 days. And most importantly, they develop a better, more efficient way to use the iron plow, which is more animal friendly. They developed a yoke which did not put pressure on the animal's windpipe, which made the animals healthier, stronger, and ultimately made farming more productive. The Pax Sinica did not last. One problem for the late Han Dynasty was the spread of diseases, which came to China along the Silk Road with movements of trader and other migrants. Smallpox, measles, and bubonic plague were among the most destructive of these epidemics. Another problem was the economy. Many small farmers lost their lands to large landowners in order to satisfy debts, and as a result, inequality developed. Some leaders come along to attempt to redistribute the land from large landowners to peasants. However, the land reform was not well received, and as a result, unrest develops within the Han Dynasty. Subsequent Han emperors failed to address the land distribution problem and the associated famines, and that inspired more and more uprisings and more violence within the Han Dynasty. And by 220 CE, the emperor was overthrown and the Han was divided into three kingdoms, thus marking the end of the Han Dynasty.